Swain, former professor at Vanderbilt University of Political Science and Law and a good friend to the program. Doc, we've had you on before to talk about this, but now even if you speak out against critical race theory, you are going to be canceled. And I know that happened to you with Facebook because you're speaking out about this big race divide that the left wants us to believe is happening in this country and systemic racism, which again, I don't think what they're saying in D.C. coincides with what's happening on Main Street, USA.
Yeah, that's right. Facebook has barred me from doing Facebook Lives for 30 days. And it is the case that when I do a Facebook Live or Instagram Live, that lots of parents and people concerned about critical race theory will ask me my opinion about race relations and what should be done. And I can tell you that critical race theory, as they're teaching it in this country, it is racism itself. It is white supremacy because it argues that all white people are oppressors, that they have a property interest in their whiteness, that they have to be forced to become anti-racist. And in many cases, they are violating the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Protection Clause. The civil rights laws protect white people as well as every other group.
I got to ask you about this, too, because it seems the woke left who says, you know, racism is everywhere in this country and the biggest threat is white people. Of course, the last week or so, the narrative the media jumped on the bandwagon with, which now they'll probably leave it on the back burner because now we have a new gun violence, and that's Asian American attacks. We pulled the stats. It went up to 100 and some. It was 49 or 50 last year, so it did double. But the majority of those 100 and some attacks last year in 2020 were committed by black individuals on Asian Americans, not whites, which we don't see any of those in the headlines either. So they don't give you the facts, and then they just skew the narrative now for yet another race, trying to pit that minority against whites.
Well, the biggest racism against Asian Americans is occurring in colleges and universities where they are being discriminated against when it comes to admission, promotions, and awards. And I think the Democrats are using an isolated attack that there's no evidence that it was motivated by hate as a way to take people's mind off the real discrimination against Asians that's taking place. And when it comes to black hate crimes, they are not labeling black crimes against other races and ethnicities as hate crimes, and I think they should. There is a double standard there that's been troubling to many Americans for a long time. And if you were actually to label all the crimes committed by black youth against people of other races and ethnicities, and not just the youth, there's some older people doing it too, we would be horrified, and we would not be able to deny that there's a serious problem taking place. And it's not just racism running in one direction.
Yeah, we just put up some headlines while you're talking. Leave them up, guys. Several stories we found over the last couple of weeks. You had the two black teens in Rochester set the mentally ill 63-year-old man, white man, on fire. He died. No coverage from the mainstream media. Racist black man who stabbed the 12-year-old in the neck at McDonald's, screaming white devils. No major. I mean, if it goes the other way, they don't use the word racism whatsoever, and they don't even cover it. Final question before we run out of time, Doc. I got to ask you this one. We saw the town of Evanston, Illinois City Council vote last night, a suburb town of Chicago. I believe they're setting aside $400 million for reparations that they are going to give to black community members of that city to either pay their mortgage off, do remodeling on their house, or put a down payment. What about poor white folk, poor Asian folk, poor Latino folk? Just black folks are going to get these reparations? I'm pretty sure none of them were slaves, and none of the folks paying the taxes in that town, which are going to pay the reparations, were slave owners.
Well, according to what I read, they don't have to be descendants of slaves to benefit from it. They have to have lived in the community. Wow. And it does create a lot of resentment and anger among members of other groups. It doesn't solve the problem, because the problems that when we look at disparities between and among the races, there's no evidence, that that's tied to money, that there's a money solution. And no matter how much money is done, and every town and city and state across the nation could offer reparations, and it still would not address the problem, and you still have the same grievances because we're attacking the wrong issue.
Yeah, Dr. Carol Swain, your insight is always so much appreciated on our program. I have a feeling we're going to need your expertise again real soon, because this is the narrative, and the left and the media are going to continue ramming it down our throats. colleges, universities, high schools, now middle and elementary schools are doing the same thing, and we've got to keep our voices heard. Dr. Carol Swain, thank you so much. You take care.
Thank you.